Well, welcome back to Deep Thoughts. This is a very special report. So I've been trying to do this cigar episode for quite some time. I created this crappy channel off to the side. I finally shut it off, but I've been wanting to answer you guys' questions because some of you have started smoking cigars since you watched the show. And there's just a ton of myths about cigars, what they are, what they're not. There's the myths about South American cigars versus Cuban cigars. And I have brought one of my absolute experts on the subject, Dave, who's also called The Dude online. He's got his own channel, which we're going to link down below, so you can get the most incredible, intense library of cigar reviews, and not only stuff that you can find in your local cigar shop, but stuff that you have to travel to Cuba to get. You can get great tasting notes and all kinds of stuff. So we're just going to take our time. We got two Cubans here. We're going to dissect the whole thing, talk about it, and by the time it's over, if you didn't know anything about cigars, you're going to be in good shape in about an hour plus time. So welcome, Dave.
Hey, glad to be here, really.
I like that big long intro.
That was a long
You're
intro.
Like, shut the fuck up.
Man, I'm telling you, man, that was a long intro, but yeah, I mean, yeah, it's good.
So
I mean,
we brought our tools.
I don't consider myself an expert. I mean, I'm documenting
He's an expert.
my
Let me clarify, he's an expert.
I'm just a dude that loves to smoke cigars. So Ramone owned, specially selected. Now I always let my people pick. So pick which one you want.
Okay, well, let's see.
That
this
one?
here.
Are you sure?
First time I'm going to switch.
Okay,
like
okay,
that.
there we go. I always do that because it's like, if it's bad, it's not my fault.
Do you have your phone over there?
Yeah.
Take a picture, and then we'll use it in the video.
Okay.
So the picture you're about to see is the one that came right out of this digital bow.
Okay.
Yeah, just give me a good one.
Well, you want to do both?
They should, man. All
right.
All right. So tell me about this one.
Ramone, specially selected. Pretty good, decent brand. I think it's considered a multi-local brand.
What's that mean?
So they have different categories of cigars. They have like the mainline brands, which are like Cohiba, Monte Cristo, Romeo, Punch. No, Punch is not. Partagas.
Okay, let me ask you about Punch. I was taught I'm supposed to say it Punch.
I call it Punch.
Everyone else calls it Punch.
Okay, well here's another one. So El Rey del Mundo. Okay. It's CHOIX.
Okay,
and SUPREM.
Okay.
I don't think there's an E on the end. So.
Okay.
But I mean, I pronounce that Choice Supreme, right?
Right.
So my friends from the UK,
yeah,
they call it a Choix Supreme, or the French complicated English simplified.
But they also say tissue,
right?
And schedule
and aluminium.
Oh
my God! Yeah.
Automatic.
Yeah.
It's an automatic car.
Articulated lorry.
I forgot what that is.
It's I believe that's a bus.
Okay, I thought it might be like a female part, but
trying
to make sure we're not going there. All right. So, and how old is this stick?
It's just a couple years old. It's not anything super aged or whatever it is. But we're sitting outside.
But 2 years makes a difference.
It does. It really does. Actually, I mentioned we were in the car driving over and stuff like that, and I mentioned my friend from London had to get some quickies for just this exact same cigar, and I was smoking one of these last night, and I smoked one of his a couple days ago, and definitely a little bit of a difference. I noticed that his were a little bit younger.
Tastes like a green apple. You're just like, oh wow.
It was different. I mean, it just had that like it hadn't started to become as rounded. But this is just a 2-year-old cigar. But
so you cut, and I'm gonna just give them the layman's explanation of the difference between aged and not aged, and then we're gonna go into Cuban and not Cuban. So this stick is what, 14? A couple of years old?
Yeah, a couple years old.
So a couple of years old. And, tobacco ferments just like alcohol. And so
Yeah.
the difference is amazing sometimes between one that's really young and one that's really older. And even just 2 years can make all the difference in the world sometimes.
Sure.
And, how would you describe, because, I do describe a younger cigar as being very, it has very pronounced, acute flavor. So whatever flavors are in there are really strong. And the more that it ages, it mellows and seems to blend the flavors together. So you get kind of a...
Yeah, or it'll develop more rounder flavors and so on and so forth. Younger cigars tend to be a bit tannic, which in the conagers can be high depending on the cigars that you get. So these conagers and the tannins inside the tobacco leaf, as the cigar ages, it will round out that. Like you said, it creates these really wonderful flavors and nuances in there, and so on and so forth. Now, granted, some cigars, you're not going to get that.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. I mean, on the Cuban side and on the New World side, they blend cigars for various definite taste and flavor profiles and palates.
Oh, and just to define some terms, because we're going to start a little advanced, and then we're going to go back to the basics so you guys can get a good preview. It's going to be the action sequence at the front of the movie, and then we're going to figure out why we're watching this film. New World refers to South America.
Right? New World, New World is like Central. You got to do the islands too. Dominican Republic, right?
Oh, right.
And Nicaragua, Honduras, all that stuff.
Not
South
Cuba
America.
is probably the easiest way to say it.
Right. Yeah, New World is not. That's perfect because you got Cameroon over in Africa, the Philippines. You've got various areas all over the world that do make cigars.
Yeah.
So those would be considered New World cigars, and then you have Cubans.
Yeah. And so, I guess we should talk. We're not going to get as much out of the cigar because we're going to be talking. It's a little windy.
Well, yeah, but this thing it's a full body, full strength cigar. Ramon is one of the ones that is definitely a stronger cigar.
Really?
So you're gonna get it's unless except for tunneling and canoeing and stuff like that because of the wind out here and stuff like that.
Right.
The reason I picked this cigar is because we are going to be talking and we're going to be bullshitting and talking and everything like that. So like you're still going to pick stuff up. Because it's pretty strong. Yeah,
okay.
It's going to hit you. So and that's why I picked it out,
Okay.
So, yeah.
What kind of lighter would you like? This has got a pretty good flame.
Okay.
You can control that flame a lot more.
All
There's
right.
only one flame, but
I like one flame.
yeah.
I do. Whoa.
Yeah, that door is starting to be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, maybe
That's what I get for a free lighter. This one's just a little lightweight.
Whoop.
It's like a little bit of a...
There we go.
Oh, this thing is turned up really high. So what I was going to say was that, I got into cigars completely unintentionally due to friends. And so I didn't know anything about cigars. They never sat me down and explained how cigars put together. And so I just bumbled around for almost 5 years. And it probably wasn't until I went to Bulldog that I really started spending some time. My co-host on the other show, Kyle, did help out, quite a bit. But so then, once I got to the basics of how cigars are put together and how to light them and how to hang on to them, what the terminology is, then I was a New World person. That was it. And I heard all this stuff about Cubans. Anytime someone talks about something you can't have, there's this knee-jerk reaction to kind of say, well, I don't want that, And so I was repeating what other people were saying, which was that, Cubans are grassy and gross and da-da-da-da. And so I set sail on that notion, right? Mm-hmm. Then I smoked one, and then I was transformed. And I thought, this is the taste I would prefer all day long. New Worlds are okay.
There's some good ones out there.
There are. Fuente, we know our buddy really loves those. Mm-hmm. This one here, just anything Cuban, your collection is usually immaculate. It is a lighter, it is more grassy and just beautiful. You really feel like for me, anytime I taste things from other cultures, like if I eat Indian food or something, I get this weird, like, almost out of body experience, like I'm there. Just one little bite on a seed or something, man, it's like it's a. So anyway, when I smoke these, it felt like I'm going there.
It's definitely different, right? It's a different smoking a Cuban as opposed to a New World cigar. It's definitely different. There's Cubans out there that are fairly powerful, but I don't think of Cubans really being a hit you in the face.
Right.
Kind of like, and especially a Nicaraguan cigar. Not all Nicaraguan cigars are hit you in the face, because I just smoked one last week. The guy gave me one, and it was like, wow, this is like a Nicaraguan cigar I would have never guessed. I mean, it was just had a really nice floral note to it, and it had some chocolate notes in there, and it wasn't like this like a Liga Privada, like that's everybody's kind of staple for a really big, powerful cigar like that, where it hits you in the face. So yeah, these definitely Cuban is a little more subtle. You're definitely gonna be different than a New World cigar for sure.
So let me ask you the standard questions here. When did you smoke, at least seriously, your first cigar in general? How old were you?
Oh, I was a flight attendant with the airlines. I've been doing that for 24 years. Probably about 20 years ago, like around 98.
Okay.
I smoked a Juan Lopez number 1.
Is that Cuban?
Yeah.
So your first cigar was a Cuban?
Well, no.
So I mean, my question is your first cigar and then your first Cuban.
Okay, my first cigar. Well, my first cigar, I was a kid. I was probably I don't know, 11 or 12 years old or something like that. Maybe.
Did you
even
try
10.
to inhale it?
No, actually, I didn't know, because my
bastard.
dad smoked cigars.
Oh,
so
okay.
my dad,
you knew.
So my dad, I'd been watching my dad smoke cigars.
All right.
And so he would go to Thompson. I think they had Thompson Cigars had the catalog back then, and he would order these. They were a Churchill-sized cigar, and they would come in a green box with like a map of the world on it.
Oh,
and
wow!
It was really this, kind of like their
That's cool, man.
50-cent stick or whatever it was that back in the day. And so he would get like 3 or 4 boxes and keep them in the refrigerator. And my dad always used to say he'd be puttering around the house. So my dad would be puttering around the house outside, because my mom wouldn't let him smoke inside.
Sure.
And he'd be smoking a cigar.
Okay.
So, probably about 10, 11, 12 years old, I've smoked his cigars. Without him knowing it, of course.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Without him knowing, you go and smell like a fucking cigar.
Well, so, but that was the beginning of cigars. So, and
did you continue?
No, that's the thing, is I didn't really continue on. I mean, I did that, and I smoked, and then, when I got back to, kind of seriously smoking cigars, like really kind of trying to figure out when I was smoking and what I was, doing all that all that stuff, I, would actually get cigars from my dad, and I would bring them back to him, and that was like the highlight of his life.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
He would be like, what is this? Like, you didn't have to do that, because I would get him stuff, and he would like taste it, and it'd be like, whoa, what the? This is not my typical $2 stick or whatever.
It's a boy. Yeah,
exactly. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah, and that's kind of what rounded me into doing that as a flight attendant. I've had the resources to be able to like just fly somewhere and get the stuff and then bring it back and so on and so forth. So
what was your favorite New World cigar prior to smoking a Cuban?
Well,
did you have a favorite or any brands that stuck out?
Well, Fuente was always around.
Yeah.
Fuente,
what's crazy for me is Fuente. I only know Fuente from a year and a half ago.
Oh no,
and Fuente is like the staple going back.
Well, okay, so like Macanudo, that's a one, and actually Macanudo was created by Punch, and their logos on the boxes actually were the same.
Really?
I don't know. I was watching an interview with Simon. I think it was Simon Chase interview where he was talking about how Punch and Macanudo were. I don't know if it was Simon Chase. Anyway, same kind of thing. And Punch just changed their logo and labels and stuff like that recently. But if you look at an old Macanudo kind of label on the box,
Yeah.
And a Punch, it's the same thing except for the name, pretty
Really?
much, because they owned each other. So
Okay.
Macanudo is one of the top-selling cigars in the world, right? I mean, it's up there
Oh yeah.
as a top-selling cigar.
So Macanudo, just to take a break on that cigar, it's a great starter cigar that is high quality for a New World cigar, and it is super duper light. And so in terms of
Yeah.
and you'll notice us using terms, and what I wanted to make sure we're passing this on to everyone watching this and listening to it. You have strength and you have body. So your body is your flavor profile, and your strength is merely how much the tobacco is going to displace your your blood sugar levels, excuse me. So most people that I hang out with do not try to smoke a full strength cigar unless they really smoke regularly. But if you do smoke a cigar and you get a little tipsy or a little high or a little nauseous, make sure, one, you're not inhaling it, and two, have some sugar nearby and some real sugar. You can't drink.
Or a chocolate bar.
Chocolate bar?
Chocolate bar
Absolutely.
works great. Plus, it goes good with the cigar.
And yeah, exactly. I was going to say pairing. I was going to interview about pairing at some point in here. But yeah, you eat it, and like within a minute, you'll feel much better.
Yeah.
I mean, it's phenomenal. You go from like almost hurling on yourself to lighting another cigar.
Yeah, don't ever smoke on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
Don't ever, which reminds me of a story.
Let's have it. We
Okay,
got time.
so I'm living in New York as a flight attendant at the time, and I'm going back and forth to the various places in Manhattan and so on and so forth. So I always used to like to go to the old Davidoff shop on Columbus, which is no longer there. It moved over to I think 5th, where La Concha was. Anyway, so the Davidoff Lounge was basically probably could fit. There was 2 chairs there, kind of 2 chairs in the back, a table with 4, and then some lockers. Basically, this kind of long, narrow space.
Okay, like a submarine.
And
most of those New York places.
Yeah. And it was like their filtration system sucked there or whatever.
Okay.
So they would cram in like 12 guys or 11 guys to be in there, right, smoking. So you would just be like,
That cloud that hovers about right here.
oh my God. So like, of course I was smoking, I think I smoked it was a Padron Exclusivo, and it was like a kind of a larger, I can't remember the names of the Padron, but there was 2 Padrones that I smoked, and they were rather strong. One of them was a Churchill size one, and the other one was a little bit smaller. And so like I smoked the one and everything was fine. I had an empty stomach, and I was drinking a soda or whatever it was because I like something sweet with the cigar. And then I start smoking the second one. Well, obviously with that room being the way that it is, right? It's like I've smoked the first one, but I've actually smoked 3.
Yeah.
Or 2.5, you know what I mean?
Right.
And then I light up this other one, and I got like halfway through that cigar and ran an empty stomach, and I'm like ready to hurl.
Oh,
I mean, it was like terrible, right?
Jeez.
So I went and I ran out, and luckily in New York, I mean, you can just go, there's a hot dog cart on the corner everywhere there. So I just grabbed the hot dog and woofed that down real quick.
Oh, that helped, huh?
Oh, yeah, it was
Just
like,
patted you up.
Yeah, food. As soon as you do that and you get that whole digestion of the food and everything like that or whatever, it just, like you said, it raises the blood, whatever. And
Yeah, blood sugar levels. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. So, but yeah, that was an experience there. But that was such a great lounge. I love that place. Loved it.
So you get through your New Worlds, and it's late 90s, and you smoke your first Cuban. Did you have any, like I felt like I had a kind of an epiphany when I smoked my first one, where I had that taste for the first time, and whatever it is, I just love the taste. It is like hay. It's like a hay tobacco flavor. But then with you, see, the difference is I smoked Cubans that weren't that old, and they're nice, they're wonderful, but when you get one aged, you get a whole different experience, and you get this, what we call the medicinal flavor, which sounds like a gross idea that you'd smoke a cigar and have a medicinal, like medicine kind of flavor or taste, but it is euphoria when you get it.
Yeah, part of that bouquet, which, that was brought to light to me by my friend in London.
Which you took it to me, yeah.
Yeah, so usually with the older cigars, if they've been aged right and everything like that, they're going to have like this kind of a medicinal sweetness bouquet on there that's just, you have to smell it to actually know what it is. You just can't explain it to somebody.
Yeah.
And, you could tell, like, in that can happen to a cigar, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. Actually, my friend from London, I was just smoking with him the other night.
Shall we say his name?
You know what? I'm just gonna kind of leave it.
Okay.
You know what I
All
mean?
right.
I'd just rather, it's a buddy of mine from London, and so
Very resourceful chap.
yeah. Well, he's a hell of a guy, great
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
And so he was saying that they were in Chicago opening up. Before he came there, though, they were from the 1930s. This box of cigars from the 1930s, and he didn't know how much life was going to be left in the cigars because you're looking at an 80-year-old cigar, right?
Right.
But he opened them up, and of course he got the bouquet, and like he said that he brought them there, and I don't know how many people were there at the tasting or whatever, but he said that at the end of the night he was just like kind of lighting one up after the other, because they were so good and it was so tasty, right? So yeah, I mean that whole aging a cigar, definitely you can get it, and like there's different schools of thought, I know that. Different people think different things about it, but for me, smoking vintage aged cigar that's been well taken care of is like, it's great.
It's like that's where we should probably leap off into the differences between cigarettes and cigars, because when you see someone smoke a cigar, especially if you had the knowledge I had before I started smoking them, you're thinking that someone is utterly violating the sanctity of logic. What are you doing? And you'll read these articles that say, the amount of tobacco in a single cigar is like 6 times a packet of cigarettes, and cigarettes already kill us, and blah, blah, blah. There is virtually no similarity between a cigarette and a cigar in terms of how it's constructed, what it's made out of. This is pure 100% tobacco. It has not had a bunch of addictive agents put in it. It hasn't had a lot of preservatives put in it. You don't have a filter made out of, essentially insulation from your ceiling. So you're not breathing a bunch of glass shards down your throat and then putting this goopy stuff on it. Cigarettes are largely made out of paper or cardboard. So when you look down the barrel of a cigarette, you see brown chopped up stuff. You always think, it's tobacco. Tobacco's brown. That's paper that's been treated with a goop to make it look brown. And this is, now what I've been told is that no matter how cheap the cigar is, other than machine rolled cigars, which is pretty rare still, a cigar has about 300 people touch it before you get a chance to smoke it. And that's like an average cigar.
That's a lot of people, yeah.
And I watched some documentaries recently just to update, and 300 almost seems mild compared to, the amount of fermentation and stuff. But why don't you take us down the line of, if you want to add anything to the difference between cigar and cigarettes.
I just want to add one thing, though, is that if you go on the FDA website, it says that you can smoke 2 cigars a day without any ill effects to your health. So, I mean, right there. They don't say that about cigarettes, but they say that about a cigar. So, because you're not inhaling a cigar, definitely. And, it's all tobacco, like you said, no chemicals.
In 2009, I looked that up because I was starting to smoke, and I was really worried because I hadn't smoked up to that point. I don't drink that much. I don't do any really drugs. So, I don't want to kill myself. So, the FDA at that time said that the first entry level to cancer risk was smoking 6 a day, and you had to inhale them.
There you go.
That was on the website, and it was so illogical for anything I'd ever been told about cigars. I was like, this has got to be a mistake, but it's, FDA.org or .gov or whatever, right? I couldn't believe my eyes. But and they also talked about eating tuna sushi. You only had to eat like 1 dose, and you're automatically up for mercury poisoning.
Mercury poisoning, yeah, definitely. Yeah. So
I don't know. There's really no quick way to do this, but we need to eventually get into how these things are constructed, because I think that knowing how a cigar is constructed helps you understand why it's burning the way it's burning, and help you understand where the flavor comes from. But before we get there, here's the challenge. It's like a game show now. Can you describe the fermentation process of cigars within like 5 minutes? Just the basic steps that these folks go through. The difference between the soil in Cuba, just as an obtuse statement, being more intense than, say, the New World areas.
Just as far as Cuba goes, right? So James Suckling actually has a really good video about Cuba, and he goes through the whole process from the farm to the first fermentation to these, I forget what these consolidation areas within the regions,
Oh,
inside
right. The
Cuba.
bundling places, yeah.
Well, no, they kind of bring all of the bales in there and everything like that, and then they redistribute it into Havana where the rollers are, and it gets fermented again. Cohiba has a third fermentation process with the wrapper with where they put it in barrels, and they're actually experimenting with doing like sherry. Whiskey, wine barrels, so they're kind of like going along because Fuente, I believe, does some stuff like that with their wrappers where they in these wine barrels and stuff like that. So
I like a whiskey stick every once in a while.
Yeah, so I mean, so it's on the farm, it gets picked, it gets put in the barn, it starts to ferment. Then once they ferment it, and then they break it into these bales that they send to that processing area in the middle, that gets sorted out over there, and then they ship it over to some more another area in Havana to where they're going to ferment it some more. Then they process it some more, they break it down, they blend it, they send it to the rollers, and the rollers roll it up, and then they box it, and then they ship it out. So that's kind of like a really rough breakdown of what happens. And it's fast. So
now you were telling me today that there's a stage where obviously the Cuban government controls virtually everything in Cuba. They allow the grower to keep like 10% for themselves to then resell back into the same thing, or they can roll their own cigars. I was told the other day that they allow the rollers are allowed to take a few sticks home every day. Or there's a certain level of the excess tobacco they can use to roll sticks, and they can sell them on the streets.
That's the rumor of how the Culebra was created.
Is that working? Yeah, okay.
Because the trocadores could take home so many cigars a day. Well, they would roll these 3 little cigars and then bundle them together as one. So then now they have 9 cigars. Right. That's the rumor. That's what I've heard. That's how the Culebra was created. If you've ever had a Culebra, it's like I said, it's 3 little tiny petite Coronas rolled together with string around it. And
is it the one that looks like a branch? It's got 3?
It's like
Oh,
because it gets all funky and like a bunch of knuckles, like this. On there, but it smokes fine.
Really?
But they,
shit.
And there's actually people that will cut off all 3 and smoke all 3 at once.
Oh.
I mean,
I probably would do that without even thinking about it. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, but I wouldn't recommend, especially if you're a new smoker, to do that. But I wouldn't recommend doing it at all. But there's people that have been known to do that, and it is what it is.
Okay. Okay, so how many Cuban manufacturers would you say there are today that are like the big league folks? Is there 3 dozen, 100?
Well, it's all controlled by the state.
Sure.
So, I mean, you have the director of Habanos SA or whatever it is. So, I mean, to me, it's more like, the Cuban cigar industry to me seems more like you have, say, let's just do John Huber. God, what is John Huber's stuff? Is Crown Heads. So Crown Heads has La Imperiosa, 4 Kicks, Jericho Hill, and is it Los Calaveras? I'm not sure. So anyway, let's just do with those 3, right? So they got 4 Kicks, La Imperiosa, and Jericho Hill, right? So Habanos SA to me is like that, where you have Habanos SA, and then you have Cohiba, Monte Cristo, Punch, Romeo, all of those brands that are being rolled under one umbrella of that.
But they still have their custom blenders and their family secrets, or does the government know everything?
Yeah, the government.
About
Yeah, they have a book and they blend it and they do all that stuff in there. So it's all controlled that way. Where like they have the blenders that put the stuff together, and of course each brand has its own blend and its own profile that they do. So you have the blenders blending for that, So that's kind of the way it is. So, yeah, I mean.
Well, let me break down how a cigar is put together now that we've kind of come from the advanced side all the way in, or the more theatrical side of it. So there's, and correct me along the way, just jump on top of me. So there's the filler tobacco, which is the part that's straight down the barrel. And this is where the first part of genius occurs, where you can mix any number of tobaccos to make the filler, right?
Right.
Little tiny slivers of something, big giant slivers, and these blenders, the folks that figure out how to put it together, they are brilliant enough to figure out the filler burn separate than the binder, separate than the wrapper. But the first thing that gives it its shape is called the binder, which is usually made of part of the filler, right? Or sometimes it's a totally different tobacco.
It's yeah. I mean, the binder is just a leaf that they use to bind the tobacco together.
Is it tasteless or?
No, it's not tasteless at all. I mean, everything has a taste and a flavor to it.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
It just depends on what they're going to use for the binder.
Well, most of the documentaries I've seen, they pick one of the flavors that is part of the blend and just say which leaf do we have more of, and they're using that as the binder because it's part of the blend.
Yeah,
what I don't understand is how they actually figure out the wrapper. The wrapper is the outside. It's very tender. It's very sensitive. You can break it off pretty easily with a piece of tape or if the band's too sticky. But the binder's in there to really hold the thing together. But the super-duper profile kick is the wrapper, right?
Well, the wrapper, I mean, it's to make it pretty and gorgeous. And I believe what they say in Cuba is that basically the wrapper's just for show. And they don't believe, I believe, now don't quote me on this, but I believe that they say that the wrapper's not so, it doesn't influence the flavor of the cigar as much as what, other people think.
Yeah.
Personally, I think that, like, the wrapper influences the flavor of the cigar for me, especially if it's a longer, thinner ring gauge cigar, because you're going to have less
like a
filler,
Lancero,
less binder, and more wrapper. I mean, you're going to have a wrapper that's wrapped around it. So for me, I think that something like that, the wrapper's definitely going to have more say in it. But,
Well, now, the interesting, I guess it's cosmetic reasons, but when Dave gave the description of how they ferment all this stuff, one of the things that they're doing is looking at the quality of the leaf and how much stem it has on it, because the wrapper leaves are the basically the beautiful people.
Well, that's grown differently, though. The wrapper is grown under muslin, right? So it doesn't get direct sunlight. The leaf gets broader, right? It comes out and it gets bigger. It's more supple. It's thinner, right? So, that's a completely different animal right there.
And a ton of wrappers are grown in America for the New World stuff,
Oh,
right?
yeah. They have the Connecticut shade-grown wrappers and stuff like that. And then you have a sun-grown wrapper too. That Fuente made that.
Oh, the A58s.
Or but they had the sun. They grew with the Opus, right? That was his first foray into actually growing wrapper.
Really?
For the Opus was there that he did it.
Okay.
And then he grew the wrapper and the filler there for the Opus. So, yeah.
So there's an Opus that we're referring to. Is it always an X?
Well, now our friend would have a lot more information on the Opus line, but because you have your Forbidden X, Opus X, that the Lost Cities one, which was because of the filming.
What's the blue one?
The Grand Anniversario, the Don Arturo Grand Anniversario. That's Siglo. There's a Siglo line in there. I mean, there's a lot of names.
The blue one was the closest I've ever had a Fuente that tasted remotely like a Cuban.
I like the Don Arturo. It's a great cigar.
Yeah.
It's a lot sweeter, though, than like most Cubans will be.
Yeah.
It's got that really kind of a cakey, raisiny, cinnamon.
Okay, this is crazy. So he's saying cakey, raisin, cinnamon. I'll tell you right now, if we were inside and Dave launched up an Opus X and I was downwind from him, I would swear to God he just opened up a freaking can of fruitcake.
Or, baking something in the oven.
Yeah,
it's incredible, the aroma. And the flavor on that cigar is just really, it's very pleasant. I mean, it's like it's very powerful.
Yeah.
Those cigars are very powerful, but, I mean, they're really, they got that sweetness on the lips, too. It's just the Opus line, or that line, is a completely different animal from anything that I've ever smoked.
Right.
It is, definitely.
Well, the last component on one of these, other than the band itself, is the caps on the end of these things. And they come in single, doubles, and triples. And there's little pigtail ones. You'll find little different ones. Then there's torpedoes and things. I want to ask you about sizes in a second. The caps, in terms of just my layman's approach to it, is really just the art of how to open up the cigar with a cutter is really where you think about how the cap is
well,
put
that's
together.
the finish. I mean, that's to make it pretty. I mean, the wrapper and putting the cap on there. I forget. I was talking with somebody, and because they'll have like actual Cuban rollers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and definitely in Cuba, there's Cuban rollers there that will roll stuff up. But I was talking with a guy. We went to this herf on a Thursday a while back down in San Diego, which was like this incredible. It's a legendary herf. It's anyway. So the one guy I was talking to, he said that he was, I believe, on the Robena farm or some farm like that where they were actually rolling this stuff. And the guy's just like, that looks great, but no, the roller had to finish it with the cap. But I mean, like, everything had to be done because they take a lot of pride in what they do.
Yeah.
They really do.
Well, I know that, is it Mr. Fuente? I mean, like, who owns that place? The guy that sells the cigars that create money for his rollers.
Oh, the charitable foundation?
Yeah, that's a Fuente thing, right?
Yeah, the Neiman family and the Fuente family cover they cover all the administrative expenses and everything like that. So when you do the Cigar Foundation, Charitable Foundation, I think it's called, when you give money to that, basically the money's going to go to helping out the kids because you don't have all of this bureaucratic red tape that you have to process it through to do that, right? So they're taking care of the administrative stuff, the stuff that
But it's a hospital care and health care.
They went down.
They build homes for people or something.
In the DR, they just they built hospitals. They've schools. They made it so that these children get a great education, and they're well fed, and there's a lot going on there that really helps them out. I mean, the DR's a relatively poor country, so for them to do that's awesome. So
back to the cap for 1 second. I've done this show a couple times and then gotten rid of it, but I try to teach them about the different types of cutters, being this sort of a guillotine cutter like the one we use today, to a V cutter, to a punch. V cutter is a blade that's actually shaped like a V, and it cuts your cap pretty much down the center. About 40% of it's gone, leaves a good 60% of the cap on both sides. So some people really like that. And then we have the punch, which is usually you can put it on a keychain. It's just this little thing. You want to lick the end of your stick, get it kind of soft, and then you punch it, and you're just drilling a little tiny hole. It's about a 1/4-inch hole in the bottom of the cigar. Now, I've heard a bunch of stuff about, one, when you're a rookie like I was very recently, I would guillotine way too much of the cigar off.
And then start unraveling on you.
Yeah, unravel, and it goes, tobacco gets in your mouth and stuff. Of course, I'm smoking short fillers half the time back in those days. But now I try to use a guillotine and absolutely just take off the last cap. But people are talking about using fingernails and biting them, and I've never been able to get that to work for worth a damn.
Well, the pigtail, I mean, I've heard this.
Oh, you can pull those off. I have pulled a pigtail off.
Yeah, that's why it's made that way. It's so that you wet the pigtail, and then you just twist it off, and then it's open.
Yeah, that is a brilliant invention. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
200 years old. Yeah.
Plus, it looks cool. I mean, the pigtail on a cigar looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
It does.
So, I mean, would you add anything to the art of opening up a cigar? Like I've been told that, if a cigar doesn't burn razor sharp, which means level all the way down without being relit or corrected, which is if one side of the cigar, doesn't burn, you can get your lighter out and you just fire up the side that's not even. But I mean, is there any theory that you've ever heard that the way you open up a cigar controls the way that the burn happens at the top?
I mean, you hear all kinds of stuff like, okay, so this cigar is kind of burn wonky, right? Now, me personally, I might touch that up here if it gets a little bit bad. There's people that are totally anal about that. They want a razor sharp burn the whole way through and so on and so forth. Me personally, I smoke a lot of different cigars, and I'm not so interested in the way that the cigar looks. I just want it to be open. I want to get smoke, and I want it to smoke well. That's all. If it burns wonky or whatever, I really don't care.
Well, it's funny you just shook something out of my head here, because we're talking about whether or not the wrapper adds a flavor, and I will tell you unequivocally, when I have a wonky burn, I've got obviously a lot of wrapper that's not burned on the outside, and I hit that thing, and if I pull on it really quick, I get that smooth, creamy wrapper flavor typically, depending on what I'm smoking, of course. But I don't like stuff that's usually that heavy. This one's beautiful. I mean, this one is just classic Cuban.
See, look at that. It's already correcting.
Yeah, well, that's my other question is,
So
rushing in for a correction, you're basically burning your cigar a little bit faster.
A little bit faster.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
And maybe you can comment about smoking in the wind. I've always heard, don't smoke in the wind. The obvious thing is you want to enjoy the smoke. What's the smoke that's coming off the end, we call it the foot smoke. And sometimes sitting next to you while I'm out is one of the best experiences because I get your foot smoke and I'm not even smoking.
Yeah.
But what's the big thing with smoking in the wind?
It'll cause a cigar to burn funny, right? It'll canoe. Canoeing is when it starts burning down one side and the other side doesn't burn, right? So you're going to get this canoe.
Right.
It looks like a canoe, for lack of better
that's
verbiage
true. I've
on
never
that,
heard that, but that's exactly what it is.
It does that, or like it might burn down the center faster or whatever.
And that's called...
Oh, gosh, tunneling.
Tunneling, yes.
There we go, yeah. So it could tunnel, too. So smoking in the wind, on those notes, it can make the burn on a cigar not so nice, right?
Right.
And also, if you're gonna just, if we're out here talking and everything like that, so we're not really like thinking about what we're smoking. I mean, we're thinking about it. It's a good cigar,
Right.
like I said, but that's why you want to smoke indoors. Me personally, that's why I want to smoke indoors, is because I want, especially if I'm smoking something vintage and something that I either have smoked before and I really like, or something that I've never smoked before and it's like, oh my God, I want to try this thing. So yeah, I will go in an enclosed environment. Usually like to smoke that by myself too. So I get the full effect of everything and I can really think about the cigar. And so I'll do that indoors. I'm not going to do it outside.
Right.
So yeah.
So now, let me give the standard crash course on lighting a cigar. If you go online and you look up a cigar, you will look up how to light a cigar. You're going to have like 1,000 religions on how this is done. But when you watch the folks that roll them in Cuba, they got Bic lighters. They just light them on one side. It all corrects, and they're fine. In America, we're all anal about it. And there's definitely, it seems like, the thing is this tunneling thing is why I'm kicking into this, because if the center gets lit first, then the center is going to chronologically burn faster down the center of your cigar, and the outer edges are trying to catch up with the center at all times, and that can get really weird where you get a cherry, the part that's really hot, when it comes down here by the band, you're on fire. You can barely hold onto the stick in your hand if the smoke is, if the cherry is way down inside, but the outside's not there. It'll actually put itself out half the time because it smothers the cherry, at least in my experience. So the idea is to get these butane lighters that shoot out very specific flames, right? You be very careful with them too because they'll burn a hole in you in 2 seconds.
Yeah.
But you draw a line around the outer ring of the cigar, and it just looks like a hula hoop on the end that's on fire. And then you just tap a couple times in the center, or bring it up to your mouth and tap it a couple times to get the center started. And that's what I've been doing forever. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, I like to get the foot. You just toast the foot as best you can in a circular motion, usually, with a lighter like that. And once it gets lit, I just basically, I might give it one more little, like I did today. I just give one more little one with the thing when it's in my mouth.
Right.
And just take a drag on it.
So what extra enlightenment can you give us for those who are like purists who use matches? Stick matches.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can use stick matches or spills, right? Cedar spills. Or you light the spill and then you light the cigar with that. And it's basically, you're just going to be lighting the cigar. You're not going to really be toasting it too much.
So let's define that a little bit. So you'll get one of these cigars sometimes, and it's got a cedar wrapper around the outside edge. Don't try to light it with the cedar wrapper on there. I've seen that done once. But you pull it off. A lot of times they're secured by tape. When the tape burns, it will fall on your clothes and burn a hole in your clothes.
Yeah, you want to take the tape off.
Be very careful. But it's a cedar wrapper that's, I guess, added a minimal amount of flavor to the wrapper itself. Not much. In my experience.
Yeah, cedar can do, I mean, especially in whatever, but yeah.
So like what Dave's talking about, I want you to take over it, but it's just lighting that cedar wrapper and then using that to light your cigar, and you want to probably do it over an ashtray or someplace you can drop flame. But
yeah, so, but the thing is, too, is that cigars, Cuban cigars, a lot of time, most of the time, Cuban cigars will come with a cedar in there,
right.
which it does help enhance the flavor and everything like that. But you can break off pieces of that cedar, and that's what I've been told. Is that they originally put the cedar in there so that you could do that. You could break off a cedar, make a spill, light the spill, and then light your cigar with it back in the day. Which, you know, we're talking, spill, yeah.
Okay.
So
that's new.
It's, you know, because cigars have been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? So, but yeah, lighting with the cedar. I mean, there's, you know, Fuente comes with that cedar wrapper. You take the tape off. You can kind of fold it up a little bit, get it to where it's a little bit more compact, and then you just light it with that, you know. So, yeah, or not.
So, okay, so people do this. Do you know of the benefit? Like, I watch a guy who brings in a really expensive lighter, super, you know, traditional flame, and he sits there like this and just kisses the tip of the cigar for like 5 minutes. It would seem that the guy is not an idiot. Like, there's a reason why. I'm sure he's lit it with a cigarette lighter, and for whatever reason, this is his preferred way.
Yeah, it's the way he prefers it. And that's the whole thing, right? Because we're all individuals.
I'm a snowflake.
We get, you know, so we're all different. We all think and do things differently. Now, we do get a consensus at times of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and so on and so forth. But that's the beauty of cigars too, though, is that what might work for you may not work for me.
Right.
But what I've always done and what I've always said to people, or that it doesn't matter in the sense of, like, I'm not going to try and change what you want to do, because if it works for you, it works, right?
Absolutely.
So a guy doing that for 5 minutes, that's a lot of patience on the foot of a cigar and toasting it. But you know what it is going to do, though, is it's going to definitely toast up the foot, make it really nice and hot, and you know, it might burn better.
Okay. So let's talk about the burn and what we call the pull, which is when you smoke a cigar and you pull on it, especially when you just cut it open and you haven't lit it yet. You can usually, when you get kind of familiar with cigars, you'll just immediately just pull some air through to find out what kind of smoke experience you're going to have. In terms of what I know, is that the best possible pull is just effortless. Just pulls it right through.
But not like a complete wind tunnel either. You don't want, because I remember I smoked a brand that I'm not going to tell you what the name of it is, though, but every single one of their cigars, they were New World cigars, they were just like sponges. So you would light this thing up, and it was like a wind, you know, you would cut it and draw on it, and it was like, whoa, this is a really loose draw. And then you would smoke it, and it would have problems with it tunneling, definitely, because of that draw being so much. So, and that's another thing too, is like that's why I prefer a punch, usually with the Robusto or something like that, or even like a, you know, Corona, Petite Corona, Grand Corona. If I can get it punched, and just get that smaller hole in there, that I usually prefer that over cutting it.
Okay.
Me personally.
Yeah, I like punches as well. You know, the other one is to have what's called a block stick, and that's because there's a lot of things that can cause blocks, but most of the time, in my experience, it's been one of the seams from the tobacco leaf wasn't ripped out of the tobacco leaf.
Yeah, the stem.
The stem. Sorry, what am I saying? And so it starts to clog it up. It starts when they put the binder on. It's the final compression moment before the wrapper, and that compression just gets it to the point where it can't pass any oxygen through it. And
it could be, get any air,
it can be the biggest bummer in the world. You buy a cigar for X amount of dollars and it's blocked. And so we have these, you know, there's techniques of getting a guillotine type cutter, which when opened all the way up, you can fit your cigar all the way in. And if you really just want to save yourself, you know, a lot of times you can just squeeze it and find the really hard part. And sometimes you get these, what do they call the little?
Yeah, perfect draw.
Yeah, the perfect draw is this little
Great
stick. Great tool. Has teeth on it. It's made here in OC, right?
Yeah, he's a dentist.
So you just kind of drill it, and you have to be careful to make it go down the center, because if you don't pay attention, it'll come out the side. Then
he's done that too, my friend.
I've done it once.
He's done that once
twice.
In front of me. That was great.
Yeah, and that, you know, you're screwed at that point. You got to get some tape.
Perfect repair.
Perfect repair. Yeah, and you put a little piece of wrapper on the outside to close it back up, because it's
Yep.
like a straw with a hole in it. You can't get the shit to go in your mouth, right?
Right.
So the other technique, if you're really desperate and you cannot find this, but you just paid money for the cigar and you got to have it, is you can take the guillotine, push it up halfway, and it's like a binary search in computers. You cut it half, and one of the two halves, almost 99% of the time, is going to work. So then you get a little bit of smoke, and if you're desperate, you can start cutting the one that's blocked in half. And
Or you might even be able to see the stem in there and pull that out, too.
That's right.
Yeah, and that information came from my friend from London.
Okay.
Yeah, that's absolutely, because I was sitting in his office in London, and we were talking about that stuff. We were talking about cigars, and he's like, because Cubans have a notorious reputation for getting plugged, especially if, the 99 to 2000 cigars, the quality wasn't there. Although now they're smoking relatively well, because I've got a bunch of 99 2000s, and they're just like, whoa, this is a great cigar, and it's not plugged. But anyway, that's what he said. He goes, yeah, just cut it in half, and one of them will smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, 99% of the time that'll happen. So,
but I guarantee if you cut the other one in half, when you're done with the first half that worked, probably one of those halves will work too, and you could probably pull the stick out.
yeah.
But if you get one that's half a cigar and you had the perfect draw, then you could put a hole all the way through that whole half segment, and then you'll probably be fine with both of them.
Yeah, now there's another guy I see, he actually smokes with hemostats. He'll smoke it all the way down there, and then he'll actually do his surgery, like he'll see it, and he'll like dig in there with the hemostats and pull the stem out. I saw him doing that that one Thursday, and he just pulled out the stem and kept on smoking. But yeah, and he'll like actually like a roach, he like puts it on the tip there and smokes it all the way down.
Well, our buddy Richard, is that what they call that, a hemostat?
Well, no, not his is a holder. His is like more of a cup with the stem that comes down with a hole in it, right? So
it's really beautiful. It's like carved wood, and you can have them for your
he has like different sizes. He has like probably like 6 or 7 in there.
Oh, that's why he brings that thing.
Yeah, because he has 6 or 7. So if he's smoking a large ring gauge cigar, he'll put this one on there. If it's a small ring gauge, he'll put the other one on there. Okay. And that facilitates a nice tight fit in there.
Now, what do you think about the? In fact, I just talked to the Peruvian, one of the owners of the Peruvian restaurant I was eating at, and he said that his father used to smoke 8 to 18 cigars a day, and because he was there in Cuba, and his father was from Spain, first generation. No one was actually, or he was born in Cuba, but he's half French, half Spanish, or something like that. But anyway, he said that his father would only smoke the first half of any cigar, and then he would throw it away. And I asked him why, and he goes, because his mother didn't like cigar smoke. And he says, if you throw away a cigar, this is his theory, or his father's theory, that if you threw away a cigar at the halfway mark, you can brush out with toothpaste or whatever you got left in your mouth, which is brushing your tongue is the big deal about this. Now, of course, you've layered your body with smoke, which I think smells great, but, the only way I've been able to ever reset, you have to take a shower, you have to change your clothes, obviously, and you have to brush the shit out of your mouth, and your tongue will be brown almost after a cigar, and it's almost a bummer if you got to wash it out right after you do it, because the beauty of it's the aftertaste for a couple hours. I even like in the morning when I wake up and I've got that aftertaste in my mouth.
Exactly right. I mean, you can brush, but you're still going to have all this stuff in your nose, in your nasal passages, so you can't brush your nose,
right?
So it's still going to be there.
Yeah, maybe I used to add a nasal rinse to it, but I think it's in your lungs a little bit too. So you do have to be careful with smoking cigars if your family is not totally into it. But like we were talking at lunch today, there's this uptick going on, at least in America, where women are starting to obviously realize the difference between cigarettes and cigars. There's a bit of a nostalgia around cigar smoke being on a person, and I think it's very interesting that in my experience of the last 6 or 7 years, you'll have a girl that has a father who smokes cigars, and that'll either be, I don't want you to smell like my dad, or it's completely the opposite. I love the fact you smell like my dad.
Right.
And it's such a fucking mindfuck. I don't know. It's weird.
But so the thing with women though too is that it was such this manly kind of a thing where you got the boys club and all that kind of stuff, and so women were excluded, I guess, at times. And I guess back in the day too, women weren't really allowed to smoke at all back hundreds of years ago either. There was like, woman smoking was considered taboo.
You stay pristine and flowery.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think now, though, with especially with social media and stuff like that, and these taboos being broken and everything like that, women are starting to foray into the field of smoking cigars.
Yeah,
and they're like, "Hey, I enjoy this. This is great."
Mm-hmm.
Because we've mentioned before, you don't inhale it. It's a social thing
Right.
where people all get together and talk and stuff like that, and it's really a great way for people to interact with one another.
Right.
It really is. I mean,
it really is.
The people that you meet is just incredible. I mean, I was smoking in Geneva one time at the Hotel Beau Rivage, and what they did there is they made there was a little terrace, and then they enclosed it in plastic, and then they put heat lamps. Because I was there, I think, in the middle of January, I think. So it was cold outside, right? And so it's really nice.
Get that Hadron Collider going to warm you all up.
Anyway. So yeah, I mean, it was like great. But my point to that is that I'm sitting there, and there's me, right? And I'm just a dude, right? And you got like this guy who's working in Nigeria on this oil project and stuff like that, and these real estate developers over here, and you got this person who's in film, and all these different personalities and types of walks of life are all mingled together because we're all smoking cigars.
Right. Well, now let's foray into the idea that I do my Deep Thought show. 99% of the time I'm smoking a cigar, and I find that it takes my frequency and really smooths it out, almost like you would think a hot springs would do. And so as I'm trying to piece together all these facts in my brain or things I think are true, it becomes exceptionally easier. When I don't smoke a cigar, it becomes I know it's just a little more tedious to my personality, trying to hang on see time in a timeline way. What has been because we all know it's sort of one of these things. It's a relaxing experience.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you had any significant moments where you were feeling one way, you smoked a cigar, and then you felt the other way? I mean, that happens every single time. But I mean, has there been any?
I mean, that's the whole thing. Is that I'll notice too, because when I do my documentation videos and stuff like that on smoking all that stuff, is that I can see before, because I'll be sitting there before I light up the cigar, and I light up the cigar, and then I come back. I mean, I don't go through the whole thing of the cigar. Basically, I light it up, and then I cut, and then I smoke the cigar. But when I come back, there's a definite transformation in my character at times where I'm really relaxed.
Okay, what's funny is I'm recording the audio. You're actually kind of seeing this towel that you see in the shot is the computer. I put a towel on it to keep the sun off of it. But my volume at the beginning of an episode is here, and after an hour, it's lower.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Now, let me describe Dave's show, because you're going to find the link down below. We'll try to put the links to everything we've mentioned in here. The one thing Dave does that I think is really exceptional is that he shows you for the first portion of his videos, and his videos are 7 to 10 minutes or so. Even less.
6, even less, 6 minutes.
So you can get in and out really quick. But he shows you the cigar box that it comes in, so you get to see the beauty of all the artwork on this box. Then he does a slow, unboxing. He shows you what's in there in terms of what you can expect. So one of these things, if you're buying cigars online, especially as Cuba opens up a little bit more, before you buy, you should watch the video for whatever cigar you're going to buy that he's already reviewed. Now, a lot of his stuff is impossible to get a hold of, but he takes you through super duper close-up shots of the actual wrapper, so you can really appreciate what's going on. If you like cigars, it's full-on man porn when you see this.
Or woman porn too. I mean,
yeah. So right. So you then do a full smoke. You light in front of the camera most of the time, and then you go all the way down to finished, and then you give your tasty notes at the end.
Yep.
How many of these have you done so far?
I think I've got 60-something videos right now that I've done so far of stuff. Now, if I have the box, I'll open the box up.
Right.
Or if I have a sealed box, even better, I'll try and open it up. These last ones that I've done, I opened up the sealed box, and then my computer hard drive crashed, so I had to reshoot it.
Right.
For those. But I try and do it, especially with the vintage stuff, because those cigars, 2 of those boxes were from the 80s. So it's really kind of a nice thing where people can see, because a lot of people aren't going to spend the money that I spend on cigars to open up a box and do that. I mean, it's just not. So I try and open up the box when I can. If I don't, like
Right.
there's a couple ones that I'm going to be shooting here pretty soon. They were cigars that were gifted to me. So all I can do is just
show the individual
Yeah.
cigar. So now we found a local friend of ours who just has a store that just sells cigars and a bunch of other stuff. We found a fake Cuban box,
Yep.
and you did a full breakdown of the, you cut it open and you looked at the inside and stuff. But the interesting thing for me that I didn't know before you helped him out, figuring out that he had a bad box, was the process of analyzing a box and just taking a look at the band. So why don't you explain some of the techniques?
Well, the first thing though too is with Cubans, all the newer Cubans, I think from 2010 going forward, the green seal that's over the one side of the box, there's a barcode there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can actually go to Habanos SA and then go to the authenticity check and enter the barcode in there,
Right.
and it'll tell you, hey, this is a box of Monte Cristo number 2s, box 25, blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
It'll tell you what it is. And then so I did that on there, and I think it said like Cohiba Robusto or something
different
like that.
cigar, right?
And they were Monte 2s, right? They're
Yeah.
supposed to be Monte 2s, right? So, and I think the other one was I think it said Cohiba Robusto 2 on that too, or Punch something. And those were supposed to be 2004 Sublimes, which are like way ultra expensive cigars right now.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, and you never smoked it because you dissected that one, right?
Yeah, and the Monte 2 that I did a fake Monte 2 versus a real Monte 2, and then I did that, the 2004 Cohiba that I actually cut apart. But yeah, I mean, I didn't smoke either one of them.
Now, break down for us the. It's going to be hard to do it on the video unless we show side-by-side photographs, but the bands, how they reveal forgeries.
Right. So, but the thing, here's another thing too, because there's a guy in China, in Hong Kong, James Wu. He's called Cigarism on Instagram. This guy smokes stuff that I just dream about smoking. I mean, some of the stuff he smokes is just unicorn cigars. Okay, so
Really?
but anyway, he was even talking about how in Hong Kong and Macau and stuff like that, he had a picture of a Sublime and a Sublime, and you really couldn't tell the difference even from that. I mean, it was that good. So you really have to go by the flavor. But you're spending hundreds of dollars for this cigar,
Right.
and it could be a fake. But most of the time, though, you can look at the band, like that Monte Cristo band. There wasn't really any embossing, because like a lot of times they'll have the band will be embossed. Like this band here, it has embossing on it, right? So you feel
Right.
it. It actually has a texture on there. There's
Mhm.
like dots on here, and then
Right.
this part here, you can feel it, right? It's embossed. So the
It's in
first
Braille.
thing is you look at that, and if it's flat, of course, if someone just took a picture of it and made a paper
Mhm.
band out of it. So you look at that. Some of the Cohiba bands, the C,
This is
There's
what I wanted you to talk about.
the loop in the C will go down below it and not stay within the C. There's different things with
There's holograms and stuff. Or
Well, the newer Cohibas, when did they come out with that? 14, I think.
it's like a female's profile, right?
Well, the Taino Indian,
Mm.
which is their symbol for Cohiba, right? Is that Taino Indian head? There will be an Indian head inside the Indian head in the hologram, right?
Right.
On that one, they just started doing that recently, like a few years back, with the holograms and everything like that. Now the Behike, or the Behike for our friends in Holland, Behike, they had a bit of that hologramishness going on there with it before, and
Okay.
they've developed it down the road into what they have now.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's getting harder because the fakers are finding ways to make the bands better, and then it's just going to come down to flavor. And
Right.
the bottom line is you just need to get it from a reputable source.
Now, what about folks that they get a stick, it's brand new, and they shove it up their nose? They take the opened end after they've cut it open and they suck on it. I mean, I've done that several times. I feel like an idiot because I feel like my nose, which has not suffered any massive injuries, still can't come up with any major discernible flavor. Can you? Because you're more, you've smoked hundreds and hundreds of different brands. Can
Yeah.
you sense something when you do that?
Like, okay, normally on the videos, and I'll say this too when I'm doing it, I really don't get a lot off the wrapper and the foot and everything like that. I'll
Yeah.
get maybe toasted tobacco, or maybe there'll be like a sweet thing or whatever it is on there. I really don't get a lot off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe it's just because my senses are so dull or whatever. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
If you can do that and everything like that, that's great. But the bottom line comes down to when you light the cigar and burn it,
Yeah.
it's probably not necessarily going to have those same kind of flavors and stuff like that in there. It could,
Yeah.
but I mean, for me personally, it's about how it burns and how it tastes when I'm smoking it, not
Right.
before I light it up.
Yeah, that's a really good way to say it. Now let's talk about. I'm about to pull the ban off, so let's talk about any of the myths about bans. Some of the myths that we had heard of was that the ban was put on there to keep the oil from your fingers off the cigar because it might interrupt the way the cigar burned. We kind of did some thinking about it in my previous show, and we thought, well, people used to bathe once a month too, and so the amount of oil in your hands might have been really apparent on a wrapper. But is there any logic to wrappers that you
plus
adopt?
there's another thing where, like, back in the day in the 1800s and stuff like that, they were smoking with gloves, right? So you would do the band, put it on the band there. But I'm under the impression, I believe, actually, this brand here, Ramon, because there was a real Ramon, him and his brother, they had the brand, and they were the first ones that actually did the prettiness or whatever, the decorative boxes, and
they were the first.
They were the first to do all of that stuff and make it look pretty. So and it helped sales, right? Because you would see this really pretty box and you're like, well, I want that one, right? You want the shiny rock, you don't want the dull rock. You want the coal, you want the diamond, right?
Yep.
So they were the first ones to do that, and then everybody followed suit with that down the road as well with it. So I don't know, maybe it was that way, but I mean, cigars and this have been around for so long that I don't know.
I heard a funny ass story about one of the first settlers from Europe, from Spain. I forget the guy's name that they said did this, but he came over to the Americas, finds the Native Americans, rolling up tobacco and smoking them. Well, I guess it's one of his dudes. But he goes back home and he's showing his wife this new thing. It's a cigar. And so he puffs on a cigar and then blows the smoke out his nose in a retrohale. His wife runs out of the house screaming that her husband has been possessed by the devil because he's breathing fire out of his nose. This way she viewed it, and that he actually got like a house arrest for several months.
Might have been put on
just
the rack
he
too, or
smoked
something
a
like
fucking
that.
cigar. It was really funny.
Yeah.
But you could totally believe that. Well, the other thing too is that this whole thing about, again, just to put a finer point on it, the idea that cigars give you cancer and that kind of stuff. Now, again, if you're allergic to tobacco, there might be a very violent difference between the way you would absorb tobacco and somebody else does it. But, you got Bob Hope goes 100 years, George Byrne goes 100 years, Castro smoked till he was 96, and we're not talking about one cigar a day. Can you imagine the president of Cuba, how many cigars this guy would chew down in a day? It's got to be at least as much as my friend's father,
Yeah.
And the people that roll the cigars, they got them crammed in their mouth almost the entire day smoking. Now, some of them don't have a lot of teeth and stuff, but that doesn't have to do with the cigar. It has to do with just
the blenders
general,
too. I mean, the blenders
Absolutely.
are making the blend and so on and so forth. I think I've read somewhere that Alejandro Rabena was smoking 6 or 7 cigars a day up to, he had cancer. He died, I think he was like 83 or 87 when he died. And he was still smoking that many cigars, and his cigars were really strong.
Yeah.
Like the one guy I was herfing with, he said that Rabena gave him one of those cigars, and they smoked it in Vegas, I believe it was. They were in Vegas. They brought it home, and him and his friend, they smoked it, and it was like they were
Kick their ass?
kicked their butts. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
absolutely.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to loop back in on tasting notes, because you'll use a lot of terms in your tasting notes, and even I had to ask you what you meant by it, but once you told me, it was very easy to kind of discern. Now, they'll say he'll say wood or leather or the straight up tobacco flavor. but you'll use terms like bean, and bean you might think of like, a salty refined Mexican bean if you're in America, but bean means more vanilla,
Coffee.
yeah, like a sweeter
Yeah.
profile, and then there's coffee, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you think of any other
Well,
words that we use that aren't obvious what they taste like?
Yeah, I'm more of a straightforward descriptor guy, and basically, when I document a cigar, I'm just basically throwing most of the cliff notes in there. I don't get really super heavy into it, but
Right.
and the thing is though, is that, yeah, so the cigar's going to be woody, or it's going to be beany, it's going to be leathery, it's going to be fruity, or tangy, or
Peppery.
peppery,
Yeah.
or toasted tobacco.
Right.
It can have all, like the Romeo and Julieta line, it tends to have more of a broad spectrum of flavors,
Okay.
whereas like Partagas is more pepper or tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
This can be, well, herby too. There's herby too as well. This line can have floral, herbs, honey.
We'll talk about the transitions too and the thirds, because I did not know this until I started watching the CO, the Cigar Obsession, Brian Glenn guy, and you can actually, what I found is that if you smoke a good cigar, you get transitions.
Yeah.
If you smoke a cheaper cigar, it's one dimensional. The Monte Cristo for me is one dimension. They now call it you're smoking air, because if you smoke normal cigars and you pick up Monte Cristo, it's also kind of peppery, like you get that spice, that ring inside of your mouth, at least in my experience recently. So give us a couple notes about thirds.
Well, I mean, it's just kind of developed into thirds. I mean, there's people out there that are trying to go into quarters or halves, or
Really?
and it's just all depends on
Do you believe it's really there? I mean, do you
Well,
see
transitions? There could be transitions in a cigar. Definitely, there's transitions. It could be like from the first half to the second half, or you get something in the first third, and then it transitions into the second third and the last third. I mean, definitely, there are transitions, and like you said, there's cigars that are fairly one or two dimensional that are just going to have that same thing throughout. But that's the way. Like, okay,
That's the beauty of it.
The
yeah.
Quintero Lunders, okay, so it's a cigar that I just smoked from 1983, and it didn't have any transitions, but it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be a kind of a grassy, earthy cigar throughout the entire cigar. And back then, I'm sure it was really strong. And now, 30 years later, it's mellowed out, but there's still that flavor in there. And it's not meant to be a cigar that has all of these twists and turns and so on and so forth to go through it. So it just depends.
I sense too, like if I smoke a great cigar, I could definitely feel those transitions. But there are two transitions that I think are sort of the one I love and the one I sort of dislike, which is when I first start smoking Herrera Stellis from the Drew Estate. The tip was first inch was like butter stick. If it was humidified properly, it was a butter stick. Those are the kind of first transitions I love. The ones that I'm running into more often are the first third is very ashy, almost like I'm smoking an ashtray, and it's because it hasn't been humidified properly, and that tobacco is really dry, and because it's the open end, right? And so it's dried out. I don't know how it loses its profile, but as soon as I hit the center, it's got the moisture in there, and all of a sudden I get probably what the blender was really trying to do.
Well, and that also could be though just the fact that it's an organic product, right? So they're going to be growing the same type of tobacco and throwing the same type of tobacco in there, and it's not going to be the same from year to year, right?
Yeah,
so your blender is going to try and trick your palate into, depending on how much tobacco and that they have to do that, and that's their job, is to, especially if they have a line like the Fuente and the Padron and even the Drew Estate stuff or whatever, any and Davidoff, of course. They have a lot of tobacco, and so they can, the Herrera Esteli or some of the Arturo Fuente cigars, right? They can go back and find that tobacco and just keep blending it year after year and keep that up. So maybe when they were trying to do the blend for the Herrera Stili the year that you got those boxes or whatever, they kind of messed up on the beginning of it and so on and so forth. So it just creates that.
We should talk about the blending. And so if you're trying to understand cigar blending, the easiest metaphor you can think of, or like-minded industry that you totally understand, is wine. You know that if you have an outfit that makes great whatever Cabernet Sauvignon, whatever you like, you know that year to year it could be totally different. But you're going back to that brewery because it's the best, that winery. With cigars, it's the same thing. They grow so much tobacco in a particular year with a particular weather profile, and they sell it all. And then they try to recreate that every single year. And these blenders are the geniuses that can forage a different brand as the one that they have.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Like there's blenders out there. I've read stories where like the guy will just he'll smoke the cigar and he'll tell you that it was this leaf in this region and so on. I mean, they're just that good at it. They're so good at picking all that stuff out. And those guys that do that are like phenomenal. I mean, but that's what they do. They live, eat, sleep, and breathe. That's what they do.
Yep.
And so, yeah, they one of a kind. It's hard.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So let me ask you the story that everyone always asks if you're sitting somewhere in the United States. Let's say you haven't even started really smoking cigars that much. You're just dabbling a little bit. You're obviously going to deal with the cigars that are very easy to get in America and legal under any circumstance. And then you've heard these rumors that Cuba is opening up its doors. Obviously, the Obama administration opened it much wider. The Trump administration did something and fiddled with it. But now you can still take out a tremendous number of cigars out of Cuba. Maybe some notes about where that is in terms of how it's loosening up. Just imagine someone doesn't know anything trying to go, well, how the hell do I get a Cuban?
Well, I think from Cuba now that you can bring back $800 worth of cigars, which is a pretty hefty amount of cigars, quite a few sticks.
And they tax you after a certain amount of cigars?
Yeah, like after the 800, I think it's like 4%, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
But I'm not certain on that. But
so you're going to get some duty taxes when you bring it in, and then when you bring it into your state levies another luxury tax?
I'm not sure about that. I don't know how. I don't know if they do that. I mean, I know that like people that I've talked to and stuff like that have mentioned that they have friends or whatever that will bring stuff in, and it used to be a big deal, and now they're just kind of like, oh, you got cigars? Okay. You got Cuban cigars? Okay, no problem. Now it's really loosened up quite a bit.
Now, the other interesting thing, because we deal with your friends in Europe that are all over Europe, you're just close friends, and then these folks that actually deal with cigars personally, we forget in America that no one else had a Cuban embargo, right? And so we're over here thinking the Cubans are, uranium sticks everywhere in the world, but it's just us that has this vendetta against the Castro family, and it's a shame and a stain on America that we still hang on to that old crap. But
well, and then there's that interesting story about Kennedy, right?
Tell me.
So, what was his Secretary of State or something like that? So Kennedy knew he was going to be signing the embargo into place against Cuba after all of that stuff. His favorite cigar was the H. Upman. It was a petite Corona size. It wasn't a big cigar. It was like a petite Corona size. And so he had his guy go into every cigar shop and snap up every H. Upman. I think he ended up getting about 1,200 sticks.
Wow.
Before he signed the embargo into place, so that he
wouldn't have to go too far.
He nailed it down and put it in his
That's funny.
His collection or whatever. So
okay, so the other thing about cigars is, overwhelming percent, 95+%, are all rolled by hand. And so that's one thing that when you drink a fine wine that hasn't been like, aluminum aged, it's been barrel aged, there's a difference. About $35 your wine starts becoming real wine. And there were other shit below gives you headaches and stuff. So with most cigars, it's always hand rolled, even if it's a cheap cigar. But you have shared with me a couple machine rolled cigars from the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And they were wonderful. I mean, there was just certain brands that just were always made with machines. What can you tell us about that?
Well, they used to like some of the smaller ring gauge stuff and things like that. And actually, that Quintero Londres is a machine rolled cigar. They did machine rolling until I think around 2002.
Okay.
They stopped doing machine rolled, and then they started making everything by hand. But you can get a machine made cigar from back in the day, and it has some great flavors to it. I mean,
when did they
it's
start doing that? Do you know?
the machine rolling?
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was in. Let me see here. I want to say in the 30s, maybe
Okay.
they started doing a lot of that stuff, and they invented the machine. Now, don't quote me on that.
Was it always a smaller gauge?
That I'm not absolutely sure on, but it
Okay.
seems to me that most of the smaller ring gauge cigars are the ones that were machine made, and there was a big problem in Cuba with that because it was taking jobs away from the hand rollers.
Thank
So-
God that they got rid of them. Yeah.
Well, they fought it for a while there, and then they just kind of blended everything together.
And
I
what
mean,
was the stick we smoked that was machine rolled? Do you remember?
I think it was a Quintero,
Okay.
the Lundris, I think, or I believe that was the one that we smoked, which is just a nice little stick. I mean, and it just I don't know. I mean,
So there's two things I want to jump off on that realm, which is first, let's review sizes of cigars and shapes of cigars and their significance, or it just doesn't even matter. And then one of the big ones is the color of the wrapper. People think if it's dark, it's heavy, it's full strength,
right?
which I can
Not
tell you right now,
necessarily
I
true.
don't like full strength most of the time, and I smoke those various Fuente 858s, and some are black as night, and they're sweet as
Yeah.
candy.
Yeah.
So let's go to the sizes of cigars, though. How many sizes are there?
There's
It's almost 30 sizes. right?
there's hundreds.
Other than
actually.
the weird shit people do, right?
There's so many. I mean, if you just go to the Cuban cigar website and you pull up the Vitola de Galera, I believe is what it's called, with all the different sizes of cigars that they have in there, there's like tons and tons and tons. And then you have the slang for the cigar, like we were talking about earlier, like so a double Corona or a Churchill. It could be a Churchill. The slang could be Churchill, but it could have a different ring gauge or whatever. There's could be 2 or 3 different ring gauge sizes in there,
Right.
and even the length can be a little bit different. And it goes into that slang.
And ring gauge is diameter, just in case that isn't obvious.
Yeah. So,
But do you think that, I mean, because what you and I always smoke is pretty traditional, and one of the other myths is the length of the cigar is how long it's going to take to smoke. And so sometimes a Churchill will disappear in your hands like it was a fuse in a firework, and then you can get a little tiny short Cohiba and it'll last you 2 hours and change sometimes. So at least that's been my experience. Now there's something called short filler and long filler.
So the machine rolled cigars would have the short filler in there, and
what is short filler?
short filler is just short filler. So it's more, it's smaller. It's either chopped, like sometimes they'll even chop it up and put it in there, or it's like just smaller, shorter filler. Whereas with these cigars, it's long filler, so it's like one leaf
Mm-hmm.
that they bunch up along with the other leaves and put it in there. And
Now, the rumor was that short fillers are always the excess cutoff of long fillers. Is that true?
that I don't really know about. I don't.
Okay.
It could be.
Yep.
Could be that, or it's stuff that maybe didn't make it as long filler, so they just made it short filler, and so on and
Okay.
so forth. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they do have to, because they still do machine-made cigars. I think Guantanamera is one that they do in Cuba. It's a machine-made cigar.
So
And-
why do vendors create, like Fuente has the boxes with 6 cigars, 6 different shapes and sizes. Some people hate Lanceros because they're really thin and long, and they take a little bit of more effort to keep lit. Is there a dimension of the experience that is controlled by the shape and size of the cigar, or is it just a gimmick?
No. Actually, I was talking with Willie Herrera
Lay it on me.
at a cigar event, and he starts off when he's blending with a really small cigar. And we were talking about the Herrera Esteli line, and he said that I believe it's the Lancero, is where that brand, or the Herrera Esteli, shines
Wow.
for the Lancero. But you're going to get a different flavor for different sizes of tobacco, because you're going to have that, different amounts of filler in there, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
So, and then like we were talking about earlier, with the thinner ring gauge cigar, the wrapper might come into play more, and there's going to be less filler in
right.
there, right? So it's definitely going to change the way that the cigar is going to taste, the flavor of the cigar, and so on and so forth.
Okay, so when you sit in a lounge with guys that are probably 40 and over, there's this kind of exploding trend out there for the really super thick ring gauge.
Yep.
And it's I haven't been in a circle where they haven't frowned on it being sort of a joke. They'll a lot of times they'll be shorter, but they're really thick. I mean, they're up to 58, 60 gauge.
Yeah.
I guess that's millimeters. I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah.
It's the circumference,
yeah,
right?
the circumference. It might be
Yeah.
millimeters. Yeah, 60.
Yeah.
Well, Cohiba just released their first 60 ring gauge cigar.
Really?
Yeah, that's the first, and then they released before that a 58 ring gauge cigar.
Wow.
So,
And it's a hell of a lot more tobacco inside the cigar. It could be almost twice as much tobacco. So people will complain about price differences, and we're always saying, well, look, it's a lot more tobacco, dude.
Yeah.
And you're literally saying, give me more Cuban tobacco. And then the thing is that it still burns the same length as a smaller ring gauge half the time, because the cherry is going to burn equally down. Yeah.
Yeah, you get more air in there. And yeah, I mean, with a bigger ring gauge cigar, Romeo White Churchill or a short Churchill even, it's a bigger ring gauge cigar compared to like a regular Churchill size cigar. So yeah, you get more air in there. It's going to have a different flavor to it.
Mm-hmm.
What I found myself personally is that it used to be that the short Churchill was the one to have, and that was like the one to get. And then I was noticing the flavor on the wide Churchill. But I just recently smoked some just regular Romeo Churchills, and to me, out of those three right there, the regular Churchill tasted the best to me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it just had some great flavor and really great aging potential on that cigar. I mean, I could just really taste a lot of different nice flavors in there, and I don't know. To me, that Churchill is phenomenal.
So when I smoke, when I smoke the New World stuff from down south, especially anything under $10. We were talking about the thirds, and the 1/3 we didn't really talk about. It was the last third, which is what we're in right now. In my experience, with a Cuban, I can go all the way down about half an inch, and it definitely increases the amount of sort of sooty profile, because you're now putting the flame really close to your mouth on this thing. You want to be careful with V-cuts too, because you can condense the heat and burn your lips inside. So you want to make sure you kind of keep it in the center of your mouth when you're pulling on a V-cut, in my experience. But the cheaper cigars really leave me with like almost tarry, bad flavor for the whole day. And so I tend to if I do that, it's like the only smoke I'll do all day, because it just wipes out what I can get from something else afterwards.
Yeah.
So if you smoke 3 cigars in a day, I know that you've talked about this a couple times. You definitely try to smoke the finest one first. Is that generally true?
On a fresh palate, I mean, you want to do... So if you're going to smoke something that is a treasure,
Mm-hmm.
or something that you haven't smoked before, you want to make that the first cigar of the day. So grab
Full
something
stomach.
to eat. Yeah, grab something to eat and sit down and smoke that thing. I've found that for me personally, if I'm smoking a cigars back to back to back, it starts to become just like anything else, that you do. It kind of dampens your palate,
Right.
the more that you smoke. So, yeah, I mean, if you're going to smoke multiple cigars, it's going to be more of a social setting.
Mm-hmm.
Like down in San Diego, I think I smoked that day, like 5 cigars, I think I smoked that day, because we were there from basically noon to midnight. We were there 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
So
I think 5 is the most I've ever smoked in a day.
yeah,
What's the most you've ever done in a day?
Probably 8.
Okay.
Somewhere around 8 in a day. I've found now more though that I don't smoke a lot of cigars. I mean, and there's days where I won't even smoke a cigar.
Yeah.
Like I just won't smoke one, and just the next day I might smoke one, maybe 2.
Right.
Because I just really want to enjoy the cigar and I really want to taste it, and so for me it's not a contest or anything like that,
right.
how many I can smoke or whatever it is.
It's
or
like counting your beers.
Or even like I'm going to smoke this one, and I want to smoke that one too. It's because it's like kind of this thing where I just want to try them all. But
Right.
when you're in that mode of wanting to try them all, that's great. But I think that you're kind of cheating yourself, because you're not gonna taste it for what it is if you're smoking them back to back to back to back.
Right.
I just think that it's not gonna, be as gratifying experience.
Right.
And we were talking. My girlfriend and I went out, and we were talking to a wine guy who owns the wine house. And he said he was down there and they're tasting like 40, 60 wines in a day.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm like asking him, like, dude, like, how is your palate?
He's
Like,
really, it's just an excuse to get really shit-faced.
well, but he's buying the wine,
Right.
and it's like he's like, well, no, your palate gets conditioned to where you can taste this stuff. But to me, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine after 15 or 20, you're pretty much, I don't know. I don't
You're
care.
having a good time.
Yeah. So, but same thing with cigars for me personally is that if I'm smoking socially, great, 1, 2, 3, whatever cigars. If I'm really if I'm documenting a cigar, it's a cigar I haven't had, or it's a cigar I really enjoy, I'm going to make that the first cigar of the day and probably just smoke one cigar. Like you and I will smoke one, maybe 2 cigars.
Right.
And I hadn't smoked a cigar all day.
Okay.
Right? So usually like at night, I'll smoke. I mean, I've been known to start smoking in the morning and smoke all day, but
Right.
for me personally, I like to wait most of the day and then smoke toward the end of the day.
Me too, yeah. Okay, so let's help folks out because I have vivid memories because I only recently upgraded my smoking choices probably within the last year and a half, right? Came into our normal place down the street here, smoking $3 cigars that I get in a box at home, the Baccarats, which, you know, again, just like the wine thing, 5 years ago, for probably the first 2 years from, I guess, 2012 to maybe 2015, the Baccarats were beautiful, light, didn't get a horrible tarry taste at the end, and now that cigar has become so popular, there's no more sweet wrapper anymore. The tobacco burns really, I feel like I'm smoking like the tar on a roof at the last 2 inches of that thing. But let's say someone is like, okay, I dig what you guys are saying. I would love to get out of, like they say they don't have a lot of money. You're smoking around $5 to $8 cigars, and they want to jump over that edge of, you know, $10, but they know that you go to a humidor place and it's just got thousands of cigar brands. Is there anything that's sort of hyped up? Because I think you and I have had the conversation about Davidoff's being really, you know, blown out of proportion. A lot of guys just hear this name, they smoke it, they have a generally decent experience, but they want to go over that edge. Are there any brands that we can mention? Like Herrera Steli for me is about a $13 stick. For me, I've done some of my best shows on that stick. It's crazy. But is there any logic for a person? I mean, I know everyone's palate's different and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you got to pay attention to strength, which, again, I think strong cigars are rarer than just normal average medium to low strength. Full body, you can get full body crazy, 3 transitions or more. But is there any sort of hype around cigars? Like we kind of joke about Rocky Patel, which makes it definitely a damn good cigar, all right? But people tend to obsess inside the Rocky Patel brand and they don't branch out, but there's a lot of beautiful cigars outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these brands, they get their cult followings and so on and so forth. I've mentioned Crown Heads. They have a huge cult following. No knocks against Crown Heads at all, or any brand for that matter, because what I mentioned before is everybody's different, their palate's different. So all I can say is, you know, find what you like and kind of branch out. For me personally, Dion Giolito, who makes Illusion cigars, I personally like his Epernay line still. I mean, that cigar put him on the map, the Epernay La Matin. That put him on the map, and just really a nice, sweet, nutty honey cigar in the Epernay line. But he's gone with some of his other cigars, which is a little bit more bold in the flavor and so on and so forth. So he's got a lot of stuff. And that guy, Dion, he's down in Nicaragua. It's a Nicaraguan cigar. And he's down there like every 6 weeks. He's down at the factory. He's blending. He's tasting. He's hands-on the whole thing, right, from the farm to the roller all the way up.
Gotcha,
I mean, he's really into that. So Dion Giolito, his stuff is quality. It's not super expensive.
Okay.
And you know, like I said, the Epernay line is a mellower line. There's some other ones that are in there. He's got these weird names for cigars that he does. So I can't off the top of my head, but if you go through his line of cigars, you could probably find something that you like.
Yeah.
and it's not going to be super expensive. The Caldwell stuff, Robert Caldwell's.
Oh, right.
The Eastern Standard.
What about Fuente?
Well, Fuente, I mean,
Because their range is huge, from $10, from actually $7 all the way up to $100 steaks.
Well, our friend would know more about Fuente than what we know about it, because he's definitely a Fuente whore.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so you can do. A lot of people like the short story. They like the Queen Bee, the King Bee, the 858s. 858's a solid stick.
I smoked the crap out of those.
Yeah,
things.
that's a solid stick. And then they have, I think, 4 different styles in the 858.
There's a natural, the sun grown, and that what's
Maduro,
the green one?
Candela.
Candela's.
Yeah.
If you want to have a good around $8 to $10 stick, depending on where you live, the Candela is a green cigar, and it's in the 858 camp of Fuente. If you smoke a normal cigar of any kind, and then you want to just rack your palate just a little bit and change to something you're going to really notice, I think that wrapper is.
Well, actually, one thing of note on Candela is back in the day, and I'm talking like back in the day, like 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was a lot of Candela wrapper out there.
Remember? Okay, so Dave and I chewed up, and I've said this on several episodes, MASH, the show MASH from the 70s. And what was it? It was Colonel Blake. Colonel Blake always had
it's
a Candela wrapper.
Like a Candela stick there. My dad, going back to my dad, he would get a natural wrapper and a Candela wrapper. His 2 different cigars that he had was a Candela and a natural. And we're talking in the 70s when he had these cigars. So Candela was, quite popular, and it lost its popularity over the years.
Okay.
So, and it's kind of made a comeback.
I've only ever seen the one, the 858.
Oh no! Well, Dion makes a Candela.
Okay.
There's other ones out there that people make. I think actually Drew Estates is doing a Candela, kind of a barber pole, I think, with that, and they're also
I have
doing
seen that one. You're right.
Some Candela stuff there. So people are going back to experimenting with the Candela wrapper on there. So, but yeah, I mean, as far as it goes for that. So Fuente has a huge range of cigars you can get into. Padron, I would suggest starting with the 1,000 series, the 1, 2, 3, up to 7,000 series cigars. Okay. Those are your cheaper ones, more cost effective, more bang for your buck. And then you can get into like the 1964, the 26.
So what do all those years mean? Because some guy will walk down and see a 64 band on a cigar, and the immediate question for a layman is, was this thing made in 64?
No, that's just the anniversary date that they have on there. 1926 is another anniversary date that they have in there. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what this 1964 stands for on there.
It's like birthdays and anniversaries.
Yeah, like birthdays and anniversaries and stuff like that. So, I mean...
What about when they look up an old blend from a long time ago and they try to recreate it from the past? There's really, unless you have the old stick, you won't be able to know whether or not they got it right. But have you ever had sort of an anniversary stick that is trying to recreate one you had from the original? It's rare, right?
Yeah, I just, and the thing is, though, is that for stuff like that, I mean, I think that's more for, I don't know. I mean, people try and recreate things and so on and so forth, and unless you were there doing it, you're really not going to know. I mean, I think that's more for the people, and cigars have a story. Like, people want to make a story about something, and that sells cigars as well.
Right.
If you have a good story around a cigar, people are going to pick up on that, and they're going to buy it, and they're going to try it.
Right.
So, I mean, for me, I've never had anything like that. It's been,
now, just to finish off here, because I touched it, but we didn't really go into it. What is the percentage of dark wrappers which equals full strength? Because I've definitely had them. I've had a New World, brand New World, that was Toro, black as night, smoked half an inch, and I was so sick I had to throw it away.
Yeah.
And then I've had, other sticks that are same exact color of the wrapper, and it's just no problem at all. So,
well, okay, as far as Cubans go, for like the Libertadas, that's a Maduro wrapper, because that wrapper's been aged a few years before they put it on the cigar. So, it's going to be a dark wrapper, but it's not necessarily going to be super strong. Now the Anejo, the Fuente Anejo, that's a dark wrapper, and that is going to kick your ass.
Okay.
That's the Anejo line that's a very strong cigar. Although some of them, like the Shark, and the Untold Story, actually, the Untold Story is a bit more mellow, and but it's a bigger cigar too, which is quite odd. But
well, I have people tell me that most of the Opus X's are heavy.
They're strong. Yeah, they can be really strong cigars, definitely. And even and the thing is too, which is funny, which as far as strength goes, so I've smoked like the little Fuentes that are like a little tiny Corona size, and those things are like ass kickers. I mean, they're just like boom, and like they just threw a bunch of Lajero in there, and like there you go.
Yeah.
And then I've smoked the Partagas Short. That's another one that's a little powerhouse too.
Okay.
And it's a pretty strong cigar for a little package too.
Yeah.
So
and they're expensive. They're like $15 or so.
Yeah.
Starting.
So I mean, the thing is, those Opus X's are definitely expensive. But
your Opuses are like $20 minimum.
Yeah.
And they go up to $60 a stick. Easy.
Or more. I mean, I just did that.
Or like $100, yeah.
Yeah, the BBMF.
Mm-hmm.
That one in the Casa Fuente in Vegas. I mean, I think that's $125 cigar or whatever it is.
Our friend bought a couple of those, yeah. And they're massive cigars in your hand. There's like a 58 gauge on one of those.
Yeah, it's a pretty big
But they're
cigar.
Torpedoed at the end, I think.
It's got the pigtail on the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, so the thing to remember when you go in, if you're interested, is just make sure, well, I would say this. If you're new and you walk into a cigar shop and you start asking questions about strength and body and nobody knows what the hell you're talking about or they don't know, be very careful because you might want to just go to a different place or you need a reference online or go look at Dave's channel, and try to figure out what's strong and what's weak.
I don't know, but I mean, I haven't done a lot of new, like I did the Patoro.
I know, you haven't, you've done Cubans most of the time.
Yeah, and I try and do a lot of vintage stuff, or I do stuff, like you said, it's Cuban and it's like aging potential or something that's been gifted to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I did the Patoro, which is a New World cigar. That's a pretty decent stick. They have different lines in there with the different bands. They have an orange band, a green band, and I think another band in there. It's called Patoro, Patoro.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty decent stick that I've done. But yeah, as far as New World goes, you're not going to get a lot of help. I mean, I would just say that do your research online first, or maybe just even walk in a humidor or something like that. Because a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but sometimes, let's just say that your proprietor there has gotten something new in, and they're going to try and direct you into something that they want to sell you, or maybe something on the shelf that hasn't sold, and they want to get rid of that, and they want to move it to you. So I think the best thing would be just to, ask around. You go on Reddit has forums on there that they can do. Facebook, there's forums in there, people smoking cigars. A lot of times Facebook, though, is kind of a look at me kind of a thing.
Yeah,
whereas Reddit, there's not a lot of pictures and stuff like that. Cigar Dojo, there's an app called Cigar Dojo. You can go on there, and they have a lot of stuff. And then they do these shows and stuff like that with newer things on there, and New World stuff, a lot of New World stuff.
And what's your experience between because I know a lot of folks that are in your position, you do not read the tasting notes from the vendor because they typically will throw everything like the kitchen sink in there just so that you see the buzzword that makes you, I like bean, I like the sweet bean, and you'll grab the cigar and you'll barely taste a bean in it. You do your tasting notes completely dry, right? I mean, you will read it after you've got your notes to
Well,
compare.
a lot of the Cuban stuff, though, that has like a flavor profile in there, so I'm looking to pick that up from that or whatever it is, and I compare it to the MRN book that was published in 2002, I believe. That's Minron Nee's Encyclopedia of Havana Cigars, post-revolution Havana cigars.
Right.
But so I'll do that. But yeah, as far as a New World smoke goes, I try and go in dry on that stuff and see what I pick up. And like I said, I'm more of a traditional kind of a guy as far as descriptors go. I'm not going to go into getting some kind of thing that, I don't know, like fruitcake or I don't know. Just I've seen some really interesting descriptors out there on stuff, and so I try and keep it pretty much straightforward, with traditional descriptors, and that's pretty much what I do.
You just reminded me that one thing you taught me that I should have known was that if you have a decent amount of cash and you want to go into the Cuban market, it's fully legal to purchase pre-embargo cigars, right?
Yep.
And that's something you never know. So before Castro did his thing and we blocked his cigars coming to the United States, you can legally import somehow. I mean, I don't know where the hell you would get that from.
Yeah, but still you're going to run into then you're going to have to get the receipt. If someone wants to mail you something or whatever, you still have that issue of it possibly getting seized and everything like that. But if it's pre-embargo, you're totally able to. And there's a place up in San Francisco, I forget what the name of it is. It's at one of the hotels up there where they sell pre-embargo cigars in their humidor to people. They're really expensive, though. I mean, you're talking, a pre-embargo stick's going to run you, $50 on up to whatever. I mean, it can be quite expensive for pre-embargo. And the thing about pre-embargo, though, too, is that you really got to be careful with pre-embargo because, excuse me, it's an older stick. So you're looking at a stick that's 50 plus years old.
Right.
So you might not get the experience that the blender was really wanting you to have 50 years later.
Right.
What I've mentioned, because I've smoked a few pre-embargo sticks on camera when I've documented them, and a lot of times I'll get a bit of a wonkiness in the beginning. There's this kind of wonky, papery kind of thing, and then it opens up and becomes a better tasting cigar. And that's just maybe it wasn't as well cared for or whatever. And sometimes I'll get a pre-embargo stick. I smoked a Ramon Corona from the 1950s that was just phenomenal.
Right.
And those are the ones where I opened up the bag because I had 10 of them.
Right.
And you got that medicinal sweetness out of there, and they're moist, and it's just there's no wonkiness on that whatsoever. So if you're interested in smoking or pre-embargo or even stuff that's been really well cared for, there's a guy in London, AJ Patel. He's one of these guys that's a collector, hoarder, seller, purveyor of cigars in London. He's out in Teddington, and you can go over there and maybe talk to him about stuff. But he takes good care of his stuff. The Sahakians, I think it's the Bulgari that they do, and then they have the Davidoff Lounge there in London also. They'll have a lot of stuff that's aged, aged stuff that they do. Sauterre cigars.
Well, I wanted to actually talk about aging real quick too, because there's a couple ways that things get aged. Dave will take a box of cigars and intentionally age them, put them inside a humidor, not touch them for 10 years, and then they're just sticks of gold. And then there's this sort of light aging where even the shop down the street that I buy my Hastellis from, he got a box 2 years ago. I'm the only guy that knows they're there and cares about it. And so, when I first started buying the top sticks off the box, they were, maybe 6 months to a year old. And now they're 2 to 3 years old. And I can taste the difference in just those couple of years. So, and it's because they're still fermenting, right? I mean, that's the way we talk about it. Yeah,
definitely. It's an organic product that does ferment, and then it does, develop these flavors and so on as the conagers and the tannins wick out, the moisture wicks out of it. One thing of note, too, is if you are going to age cigars, lower humidity, lower temperatures. So you can age a cigar, at say 60 degrees, 60% humidity, and that's going to kind of retard the process of the cigar, and it's going to age it quite well in there too. So you don't need to keep your cigars at 70% humidity. Actually, I personally like to smoke a drier cigar, like 68 to 65% humidity. Just for me, it's better. In London, in the UK, they tend to age their cigars or keep their cigars drier. Which to me, you smoke the cigar, it's a good cigar. It smokes good. In Switzerland, they have a tendency to keep them a lot wetter over there. So what you would have to do when you get stuff there is you normally need to maybe dry box it, unless you like that really wet cigar,
right?
Whatever it is. So dry boxing is you pull a cigar out of the humidity, you just have a regular, like a cigar box or something like that has no humidity in it whatsoever. You throw your cigars in there for a day or two. It wicks out the moisture, and then you smoke it then.
What about this whole thing of freezing cigars? This myth that, because I had it told to me, I think through the CO, and even Brian Glenn was like, I think this has been overdone, where they're telling you that manufacturers will freeze dry them for a while. They claim that Cuban cigars do that.
Well, they do that to kill the bugs.
Okay, just the bug thing.
The tobacco beetles.
Okay.
So they'll throw them in the freezer to kill the tobacco beetle or retard the tobacco beetle, and so that when you get your cigars, that you don't start getting a bunch of holes in the. Right. They eat the tobacco.
Yeah, if you ever seen a bug burrow into a piece of wood, it's the exact same thing. So you'll get your cigar. Usually, it's only like one little teeny tiny hole, and it's when you've lit it, and you got this little chimney in the center of your cigar or somewhere. Usually, it's towards the tip, in my experience. But they make this what do they call it? The healing tape.
Oh, the perfect repair stuff.
Perfect repair stuff. So. It's just, it's almost like those little things you pull out to bookmark, a book. But
perfect repair is a goop.
Oh, that's the goop kind.
You got to shake it up, and it's got.
What's the kind that's actually a little leaf?
I don't know about that one.
I've seen that too. But yeah, it's just the same goop they use for the caps, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's an organic vegetable oil.
Yep.
It's sticky, and it works like a charm. You just paint it on there like nail polish, and then wait a couple seconds, and it's good.
Yeah, and it makes your cigar experience a lot better because you're getting a nice full draw on there. Yeah.
Well, the other one too is that I've always told that Cuban tobacco will burn a blacker ash.
Yeah.
And your more New World stuff. It's really strange how my experience has been. When I was smoking the cheaper cigars, I got a lot of flowering, which means that the tobacco starts to bouquet out like looking down the barrel of a flower that's bloomed.
That's probably a short filler cigar too.
That must be what it was, because I don't see that anymore ever.
Yeah, because a short filler cigar, that's what'll happen. You have to kick the ash off.
Mm-hmm.
That's the knock against a short filler cigar, right? You smoke it, and then it's doing that flowering that you're talking about.
Because
you
can't hang on to itself, right?
No.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully that got them way over the hump of great information. And this is the kind of stuff, these are the kind of conversations we'll have while smoking. So you just basically sat in on a full session of what goes on at a smoke lounge. Now, like Dave said, you'll meet amazing people in smoke lounges. If you're an entrepreneur of any kind or trying to become one, it's a good place to go to meet guys who are, especially like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If you go eat, if you're an entrepreneur and you go eat at these weird hours and you go smoke a cigar at these weird hours, the only people that you're bumping into are either people that have these crazy jobs that start at 4 a.m, or you're dealing with an entrepreneur who's just bouncing through town to get a meal and a cigar. And the conversations are rich, amazing. You'll find all kinds of business strategies. You'll hook up with people that have services that you can use, or vice versa. So there's a whole amazing culture around cigars, which I think is...
Yeah, and then on Facebook they have events that they're doing all the time. I just noticed one that's going to be here tomorrow in Costa Mesa, in business casual, and bring a bunch of business cards.
Oh wow!
And go there. It's like
which one's doing it?
Anton? No, it's at this cigar club over there. I didn't even realize there was one there.
Okay.
And they're going to go in there, and I think it's $35 or whatever to get in, and you go in there, and I think they might give you something or whatever.
Right.
And then in New York they're doing something too. I think it's called Fine Smoke New York or something like that, where they rent out a place like the Carnegie Club or something like that, and this one coming up that they have there is you get a cigar, I forget which one it was, and then 2 different scotches for $40.
Okay.
So $40 you get a cigar, 2 scotches, and then you can mingle with a bunch of people in there.
Right.
Like to your point.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, we have a comment section. I'm going to give you a copy of the video in case you want to put it on your channel.
Okay.
And I'll put it on my channel, and then we'll just kind of give people some extra information. But again, Dave's channel is going to be in the link down below if you're not watching this on Dave's channel. And so I highly recommend you just kind of go through it, because you'll get, again, a lot of data that maybe at first you don't know what to do with it, but as soon as these Cubans start rolling into America a lot more fluently, or someone gives you a choice or something, or you just get a random stick, you'll know what you're smoking, how to get the most out of it, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, or just, you may just find something, you may not ever think you're going to smoke or whatever it is, you want to see like what it's like or whatever.
Yep.
Because there's so many cigars out there.
Yeah.
It's too many to count.
Too many to count. We left a ton of stuff out, believe it or not, but this is probably reaching almost 2 hours here. So
That's a long time. We've been here 2 hours?
probably an hour and a half easy.
Wow.
But 3,400 on my thing. My software here counts in like some bizarre seconds or something, and I don't divide by 60 really fast. So
Wow.
it's somewhere in there. But anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for listening. The bumper for this show is just go to deepthoughtsradio.com for all the feeds. This is completely atypical, but Deep Thoughts is a variety show to begin with. But definitely check out Dave's channel. Take care of yourself and someone else, and we'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.